Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Healing the Mother Wound with Kalima Masterclass. My name is Leah Sonaria, and I will be your guide today for this deep dive experience in this psychology and energetics of what's going on with our moms. And so I wanted to start off in a ceremonial way because that's how I do. If you don't know me, I'm a priestess and divine feminine wisdom carrier and teacher and educator. And this work really has to happen in the context of a very well-held, safe crucible because this is a really deep topic. It is something that's really close to our hearts. We're working in the trauma sphere a little bit. And I also want to preface this with saying this is not therapy. This is not a replacement for therapy. And if you do need to get additional support, I really highly recommend consulting a professional about this because these are really personal, deep layers, and we want to make sure that we're well tended to and that we don't re-traumatize. So the ceremonial aspect is one of those layers of creating a safe space. So just know that you are in one of those fields here, and we're going to co-create that field together. So just be aware that, yeah, we are being supported by the great goddess. And so we can do that by starting with our candles and lighting our candles. And this is also part of Kali's energy, is to burn it all away and to help transmute some of these densities. And in my experience with working with her, she operates in such a powerful, swift way, which also requires a little bit of getting used to sometimes because sometimes we're not expecting that much transformation all at once. My flame's really going off right now. So we are going to present her formally in just a minute, but with this candle flame, I just invite you to start with an initial clearing of your energy field and to really just start to sweep this flame. And if you don't have a candle, you can just imagine a candle flame, just sweeping the flame over your body, over all of your chakras, and really just beginning to do an initial clearing around your own energy field here to set up a sacred space for yourself to go through this journey together today. And just feeling into the warmth, and also the volatility of the flame and how this energy, we can get a little burnt. We can, it has both sides, right? It can help us and it can also hurt us a little bit. So we are also presencing and honoring and respecting the sacred element of the fire here today, as if we are in a circle and really gathering around this central fire that ties us all together across the globe. So we'll start off with a short meditation and grounding before I go into the presentation. Again, to regulate the nervous system so that we can really step into this space of really being in the liminal realm so that our inner childs can be healed in a way that feels good for us. And this is actually the realm of the child, is to be in that imaginal place where we get to explore and we get to change the rules about how the world operates. So with that, let's just take a moment to close down the eyes. And if it feels good for you to place your hands on your body, or just wherever it feels good, or maybe hug your stuffy if you got one, just take a moment because we're going to go into that inner child body in just a second. But we'll just begin with our breath. So taking a few deep breaths here to anchor in and ground and drop a grounding cord down into the earth to really allow yourself to be connected to the energy of the Great Mother and all of her faces and her full spectrum. She has birthed us all. So coming into that space, taking a few deep breaths to step out of the mind and anchor deep into the pelvic bowl, deep into your root gates, and allowing yourself to reconnect to the center of the earth. And then from that space, taking a moment to wrap your roots around her womb core, feeling the safety and the warmth of that unconditional love that she holds. And then taking an inhale to draw the energy up into the root gates, into your yoni if you have one, or just up into your sacral chakra, into your womb. Just filling that womb space with that love. letting it pulse a little bit, letting it do its job to clear out some of that initial stagnation that you might be holding. Lighting the flame at your womb space or your hara if you're a man. And then taking that energy from the earth again, all the way up to your heart space, maybe placing your hands on your heart, lighting the flame at your heart, maybe feeling your heart beating. And then again, drawing the energy up from the earth, up into your third eye, maybe placing your hands there as well, lighting the flame at your third eye, activating your higher intuition. And then feeling the energy from above begin to shower over you, the celestial light from the great cosmic womb, from great Father God coming down through your whole central pillar and just anchoring that energy down back into the center of the earth. And from this place, I invite you to wrap your arms around your body and give yourself a nice squeeze. Give yourself a nice hug, feeling that sense of safety in your nervous system. And then imagining yourself as your inner child. You can pick whatever age feels good for you. And just taking a moment to notice the qualities of that inner child, maybe the thoughts of that inner child, what that inner child is looking at through their eyes, where they are. Just begin to paint a little picture around this former version of you without overthinking. Just allow yourself to just capture a snapshot of you as a child. And maybe that snapshot isn't so great. Maybe there's moments, maybe the moment that's coming up for you is a little bit intense, and that's okay too. And from this place, we're going to invite in our healed mother and Kali Ma, which I'll introduce in a moment, to come in and just wrap this inner child up with a blanket of celestial light. Just feel yourself getting burritoed, and you can squeeze yourself a little bit. And just feel this swirling energy around you as a way to presence the truth of who you are without needing to explain anything, but just acknowledging your presence here. And if you would like to go one step further, you can invite a stream of light through your voice to wrap this inner child up with a song. It can be a lullaby, it can be a stream of light language, it can be some words of affirmation. Whatever you want to say to this child right now or sing to this child, know that these words are going across time and space, and they are doing the work to help to reparent that inner child in the best way, in the way that they need it at that moment. I'm just going to sing a little melody, and you can just join over. Ianai ora noi ara tura, e cureti era nara, ora naiara tura, ratura naiara naiara naiara, ora naiara naiara naiara. Umayra mayra maya, haramaya ramayre tu, haramayra naira naya, ekaramayra naira, ramayra narana. Just sending some love and gratitude to that mother that came back in. And allowing that gratitude to begin to expand out to your own mother or maternal figure and your father too, because it took both of them to bring you here. And just expanding that love and saying, thank you so much. Thank you so much for making me. Thank you so much for bringing me here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then bowing into them, bowing into yourself and your inner child. And taking a few breaths to slowly open your eyes and return back into the space. Ooh. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining. I really feel the field here is very potent and very strong, and we just shifted into this beautiful space of deep, safety. So like I said before, this can be a little triggering, so just tend to yourself as much as you can. And I also want to presence that what I'm going to be speaking to doesn't comprise the full spectrum of mother experience. There are definitely some other ones that I'm not that familiar with, like the two mom experience, the no mom experience, the trans experience. These are all different experiences, but odds are you came out of the womb of a woman. And so we're going to be presencing that person in our life. And a lot of this will also spill over into our father connections, but this webinar is really specific to the mother. Quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to invoke Kali and her power. We're going to talk about the mother wound, my mother wound healing journey, some symptoms of the mother wound, the 7 main wounded mother. Oh, click enter full screen mode. Is it not? There's a pop-up in the way. Oh, can you see? Oh, got it. Okay, is that good? Can you see it now? Okay, good. Thank you for telling me that. All right, so we're going to talk about 7 main wounded mother archetypes, the loving mother, societal causes for mother wounding, the impact of the mother wound, Kali Ma's 4-pillar framework, and something that she and I came up with called the attachment energy archetype matrix. And we'll end with an embodiment practice, and then we'll talk about the course. So I'm not going to surprise you at the end. There is a course after this, deep dive if you want to go into a full experience of healing the mother wound with Kali. Okay, so we're going to start off with a poem that I wrote because I just recently finished a book all about Kali, which I'll talk about in a second. And this poem is in the book. And yeah, this is presencing her 10 arms. This is the Maha Kali aspect of her that has all of these weapons, which I also have some that I made here for my Halloween costume, which is a whole other story. But anyways, there's a few aspects to Kali's energy here, and each one of these different tools that she holds has a different symbol or symbolic representation. So Bhadrakali. Bhadrakali means auspicious Kali. So Maha Kali emerges from the void, 10 arms outstretched, the will to destroy. Her trident strikes to pierce the veils. She tears through illusion, balances the scales. A shield she holds, guarding truth from lies. The Shank's sound disrupts disguise. Her bow is drawn, her arrow swift. Confusion clears, perceptions shift. Her sickle arcs to clear old ways. Her sword strikes down, ignorance it slays. The mace it swings with strength unbound. A severed head drips vice to the ground. The discus spins the wheel of time, transforming profane into divine. The fire she holds consumes all doubt to ignite creation for new life to sprout. A garland of skulls upon her chest, each death lays the ego to rest. She crushes pride to restore what's sacred and bears herself raw and naked. Her skirt of arms, a mantle worn, victories won, dharma sworn. Clearing karma from lifetimes past, her reach is both near and vast. Her tongue licks blood from battle's field, devouring falsehoods to reveal what's real. With each sweet taste, she cleanses the soul. Out of the chaos, the world is made whole. And there beneath her steps doth Shiva lie, still as the depths of an eternal sky. His silence holds space for her holy dance, a love divine, a cosmic romance. So that is my poem about Kali. So bringing in that energy of all of her sacred tools and weapons. Okay, so now as a group, we're going to invoke Kali and we're going to chant her mantra. She has many mantras, and the most common one is Om Klim Kali Kaye Namaha, or Om Klim Kali Nama. But this one is one that I learned from my teacher Leola Antara, and I don't have time to go over all of the meanings of each one of these different sounds, but this is one that really invokes her creative fire and her transformative energy. It actually translates to, we ask that you, Goddess Kali, who embodies the pure creative fire of transformative energy, the one who helps us dissolve our obstacles, playful one, we ask that you be present with me and us today. So we're going to chant Om, Aim, Hrim, Klim, Chamundaye, Vishe, Swaha. 3 times. Okay, so you can chant along with me. And when you're chanting to invoke the goddess, we're literally installing the goddess into our being, right? These goddesses are real. They are accessible to all of us because they are universal forces of creation, even though they come through certain lineages. And I'm so grateful for the Hindu lineage and all of the ones all the practitioners and the followers that did so much work to keep these currents of light alive, these frequencies alive and relevant. And so we can really just call upon them and they can begin to work in the subtle realms with us. And she's already called us in together, so she's already working on you. And so here we go. Om Aim Hrim Klim Chamundaye Viche Swaha. Om Aim Hrim Klim Chamundaye Viche Swaha. Om Aim Hrim Klim Chamundaye Viche Swaha. Just take a moment to feel her presence landing in your body vessel, in your temple. Saying hello, bowing to her. Welcome, Kali. All right. Okay, so a little bit more about Kali. So I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with her, but she is a full spectrum goddess, and she is one of the more misunderstood goddesses in the pantheon because of her fierceness, because she has this aspect of her that is kind of batshit crazy. And, at first glance, she's very fearsome and she has this aspect. She's got a tongue and she's got a severed head and she's got all these weapons and she's standing on Shiva. And there is that aspect of her that is wild and crazy, which is also something that we are presencing in society, that there's this full spectrum of the feminine that, we've kind of forgotten about that dark mother energy. And she also has her benevolent form, which is like this Mother Mary form, where she is, the ever unconditionally loving mother that can soothe us and hold us through anything. And that's why she decided to come in as a guide for this, because when we're looking at the mother wound, there's such a spectrum of mother. There's no perfect mother. There's messiness all around. Like, if you're a parent, you probably know this. There's no perfect way to do it. And at the same time, we have to really presence what really did happen and the impact of some of these wounds. And it's very nuanced. And so we'll talk about that in a second. But just to kind of go over her qualities and what she's all about is that she is the warrior goddess. She symbolizes that dark aspect of the mother, which again is misunderstood, but is still very much a part of the full spectrum of our humanness and our womanness. She's about creation in service destruction and service to creation and rebirth. And so in that way, she's really here to help us transform quickly, swiftly. She's a master chronomancer, meaning she helps us bend time. And when we're going back to retrieve these things, and when we start to rewrite our narratives, we can actually change the way time works, because her name actually translates to black time. She's this wild, fierce feminine, and she symbolizes this Kundalini Shakti energy, this rising of the current of energy from the base, that sexual current that, again, sometimes when not understood, it can be kind of misused and abused, and that's a whole other thing. But, a lot of the woundings around this is not an understanding of how to work with this energy. She's both wrathful and benevolent, like I said, and she eradicates the ego. So in her symbolism, all of her heads around her neck, I've got my Kali skull necklace on here, those are all symbols of the ego. And then her arms, the severed arms on her skirt, are all about karma, like karmic pieces that have been cleared. So yeah, she really is that she's here to cut through the BS. And she's kind of bloodthirsty, right? She likes to lick up the blood. And one of her myths, she springs out of Durga's eye or third eye in order to defeat this monster called Raktabija. And every time all the other gods try and slash him, all the blood starts spawning into new little monsters called asuras. And so Kali gets called in because no one else can do the job. So she rolls out her big tongue and begins to devour these little monsters. So she has that ability. And she's also very closely related to our blood mysteries and how we can start to resanctify as women that part of our body in that process that we go through every month. And then she's this shamanatrix, this Dom mom energy, because really there's no other goddess that forces you into submission than Goddess Kali. She's the ultimate Dom. And it's interesting because, in the study of Dom psychology and BDSM, which is something I'm kind of getting into right now, it's so interesting that the determining factor for why something is traumatizing and not is that field of safety and the agreements that we have and the structure that we place around all of this. So that is also what she does, is she brings you into a kind of devotional subspace where when you're in that space, you're not doing it because your mama told you so and she's going to whack you on the head. You're doing it because you have such deep love for her guidance and to know that she knows best for you. So she's that holy fire transmutation, and she's also a cosmic dancer. So she's dancing on Shiva, and that gives her that energy of like the ecstatic bliss body. And that's something we're going to really be focusing on in the course, is working with the somatics. And she's all about creation, right? So, but creative chaos, like you should have seen the slides going into this. Everything was all over the place. And then all of a sudden it just kind of forms. And so she's really here to liberate our creative force as well. Yay, Kali. Okay, so what is the mother wound? So the mother wound, I'm just going to read this out because it's a good definition. The mother wound refers to the emotional, psychological, and spiritual scars we carry from our relationships with our mothers or primary maternal figures or impactors. This wound can result from overt neglect, emotional manipulation, criticism, abandonment, or even overattachment and control. Although no mother is perfect, the pattern of having your core truth or being invalidated perpetuates these false beliefs about self. And that last piece is super important because this is such a spectrum, right? There's so many different ways. Human psychology is very complex. And at the same time, it all kind of boils down to the fact that our truth was not being honored. And how could it be? Because we're all magical. We're all really, like, if you're on this color, you're a magical human. And that is something that's been out of the circulation of our consciousness for so long that when we are being raised by these mothers, it's so hard for them to handle. That's where some of that compassion can start to come in. Not to say that we condone any of that behavior that hurt us, but when we start to reparent and remother ourselves in this way and realize that all we really need to do is honor our true authentic selves, it can really pave the way forward for that healing to happen a lot quicker. So there's a term called mother hunger that oh my gosh, her name is eluding me right now. Kelly McDaniel. She wrote a book called Mother Hunger, and she basically talks about this yearning, right? Because we are yearning for that mother. And for me, it took going to the goddess in order to find that energy in my life. But all of it kind of boils down to a lack of nurturing, protecting, and guiding. So those are the three pillars that we all need as children, beyond just, having food and shelter, to be able to be a thriving human. Okay, so here are some symptoms of the mother wound. There are many, and as we go through this list, I really encourage you to just note, you could even write it down, which ones are present in your life. This can be very obvious at times and can be very subtle at times. I'm kind of in that subtle realm where I realize, oh my goodness, like these little things I still haven't quite looked at. But just to run through the list, there's low self-esteem, self-doubt, lack of confidence, struggling with holding and keeping boundaries, feeling lost around your purpose and your personal desires, changing who you are to appease others. So this is like a coping mechanism, is when you're shape-shifting a lot because you need to be different, because mommy is so different. She's got a certain state over here and then a certain state over here. Also, being hyper vigilant, always on edge or worried. That's also if you have the anxious attachment, which I'll talk about in a second. But when your mother is always like, this is something that happened to me because my mother grew up in a war zone. This was like everything was going to kill me. Everything was going to kill me. So that's also something to be really aware of, is that when we don't have a safe home base, we can't explore the fence line. We can't go out and start to be our human selves that really want to just venture out. So another thing is feeling like you can never do anything right. I mean, this is when you have consistent down talking and things that, just being told that you're never good enough. Lack of follow through on projects and goals. It's that start-stop cycle that I've really gone through that a lot because of that ingrained sense that belief that you're already going to be a failure on that. Over focus on external validation and approval. Again, trying to get what you wanted, what you needed from your mother that was supposed to be given to you unconditionally, but you're constantly checking the Instagram stories to see who looked, or, see how many likes there are on your posts, those kinds of things. Also a physical tick or a bouncy leg or a twitch to self-soothe. And sometimes like you might even notice yourself just like doing that kind of thing with your mouth. These are all nervous system regulation things that our bodies are so intelligent of doing on their own. And sometimes we forget like, oh, this is actually a symptom of something bigger. Toxic relationships, trauma bonds, codependency. This is a huge category because essentially patterns keep replicating unless we do the work to break them. So we start to see these same things happening in our romantic relationships, in our parenting, and of course the relationships with our parents. And then there's also this deep sense of unworthiness of receiving love, money, and praise. And this is why this wound is such an important one to really address, because when we have that block on our receptivity, how are we supposed to really thrive in this life? Again, another thing is just perfectionism, like just needing to always do it right. Sometimes it's fixation, sometimes it's ADHD, it's a full spectrum. And then those addictive tendencies, because again, we're trying to fill the void with something we weren't getting. And at the end of the day, when you start to look at how other people are treating you or reacting, because there's you and your own boundaries, but then there's also how others are starting to feed back to you what you are, what you're projecting. And sometimes that comes in the form of people not respecting or honoring you. Like, and it can be very subtle. It can be like, why does nobody ever write me a testimonial? Why does nobody ever follow up on my calls? Why do people keep flaking out on me? Those kinds of things are good indicators that this is a deeper wound, a subconscious wound that needs to be addressed. Okay, let's take a deep breath together. Let it go. Sending compassion and love back to our mothers. They did the best they could, and we're going to do better. Okay, so my mother wound healing journey is deep. Like I mentioned, my mother is a war trauma survivor from Vietnam. I grew up with a very young mother, a hypervigilant mother, a hypercritical mother, kind of tiger mom energy. If you're an immigrant, you might relate to this. And I tried to be so perfect for her. I tried to get all the straight A's. I tried to overachieve. And at the same time, she was a ticking time bomb. Ticking time bomb. Like we could not predict her days, you know, and she has undiagnosed mental health issues, a lot of them. And at the end of the day, it created a very volatile energy that kept me on edge all the time and made me quite an anxious person. And even though I was highly functional deep down inside, I really felt emotionally very, very wounded. And she did her best to keep us clothed and fed and all of those things. But when it came to acknowledging my truth, it wasn't there at all. And what I came to realize was that she actually was in competition with me. And this is a result of narcissism and sort of a set of insecurities that come with moving to a new country and not really knowing how to operate in society. Also kind of falling into the trap of consumerism and, you know, climbing the corporate ladder and needing to, you know, be like one of the boys and all of that stuff. And so I kind of had this double knot of not ever being good enough, and also having none of my accomplishments being recognized because it threatened her. And so it was like, the more I did to try and please her, the more it would threaten her, and it would create this weird loop of energy that would leave me feeling like I didn't know what to do. And so what I ended up doing, when there's kind of a whole story behind this, literally an entire memoir, which is called Super Kali, which I just finished writing. It created this interesting dynamic that led me closer to her, and I had to live with her for several years. And that's where I really started to unpack the deeper layers of the epigenetics and what was happening to her mother and different patterns that were playing out, and ultimately brought me back to unconditional love and compassion, forgiveness, and strengthened me in the end. Because when you actually do the work to heal this wound, it's kind of like a slingshot. Everything just like starts to launch because you begin to be more whole and integrated. And then what's beautiful about it too is that you can see the healing start to happen in real time with your own mother, because even though maybe they'll never go to therapy or address any of those things because there's too much shame around it, they'll still feel that energetic healing of your real-time work that you're doing for your ancestry. So more I could say about that, but I can't wait to share this book because it really was the deepest, most vulnerable thing I've ever done to excavate this wound, and it took me 5 years to write. So it's sometimes these processes can take a while, but also when we're working with goddess energy and we start to dialogue with the inner child and start to dialogue with the inner mother and the healed mother within and the goddess, they start to really point out some clues, and you start to piece together the puzzle in a really beautiful way. Okay, so here's the big chart, and I'm going to walk through this because this is something that I didn't know about until just recently. And it really gave me this eye-opening view because, like I said before, this wound is very nuanced, very complex, and it has a full spectrum to it. And because, of course, we're humans. And the way I've broken it down is essentially in alignment with Kali's energy. So on the left side here, we have the wrathful, and then on the right-hand side, we have the benevolent. And these are all styles of mothering that are in the wounded category. So I'm going to start with the left side. So on the top, we have the mother, and then on the bottom, we have the child. And so this is what happens when we are like the child has to overcompensate or has to, you know, meet the energy of the mother and adjust. And it's in all of these little micro adjustments that we start to fragment ourselves and lose our sense of self. So starting with the chaotic mother, and you can, as we're going through this, like take a few deep breaths, because again, this might bring up some stuff, but also take note of which ones are relevant for you, which ones are true for you. Okay, so the first archetype is the chaotic mother. So this is the more wrathful, the more walking on eggshells, kind of like sometimes borderline, sometimes bipolar kind of mother, unpredictable, erratic behavior, volatile emotions, warmth to anger. You don't know why she's upset. Like it's again, like it creates that disorganized attachment style, and lack of structure. And you might notice it also like with my mother, like nothing has a home. Everything just gets thrown around. And it's like, she's a refugee. It makes sense. And then, yeah, no clear boundaries, no emotional consistency. Like you do well one day, she says, good job. The next day, you didn't do good enough. You know, you got a B in PE and now your life is over, that kind of thing. So this creates an over responsible child, the child that has to constantly be on edge, vigilant, and growing up a little too fast. They can't play and they can't be in that realm of just exploring. Okay, then next we have the hovering mother or the micromanager. So this is the overprotective or controlling mother, the constant monitoring, she's also kind of anxious. She's like, you know, everything's gonna kill you, the helicopter mother. And then she's not able to really make the help to soothe the child in their wins and losses and, you know, their quote unquote failures. They can't really presence that experience. And so what this creates is the people pleasing child. And again, very similar energies, where this child has to overcompensate and has to try to do their best to not have that mother, you know, like they're hyper aware. And one good thing about all of this, I'll say, is that you can transmute that same energy because you were trained to be hyper aware, if this was you, to then having a sense of tracking your own life and being able to pick up on the subtle cues that the universe is telling you. So these are all things that they're not necessarily bad. They're just, we need to redirect how the energy is working for us. Okay, then we have the parentifier. Okay, so parentifying is when you're, as a parent, you place all these responsibilities on your child to be the parent. This could happen if you were the older child and you had to take care of your younger siblings. And this also is like, you know, getting the kid to grow up. And in some old school child rearing styles, this was like the good thing, you know, where it's like, you got to be responsible. You got to get the groceries and, you know, and it's interesting because this day and age, sometimes, you know, parents aren't giving their kids enough freedom to do things. So it's, again, it's very nuanced, but also when it comes to a child's needs, these children really, they just, again, they need to be kids. They need to be innocent. They need to be cared for. And so you don't want to have that caretaker child that is over responsible for things. Okay, then you have the narcissist mother. This is one I have, and in addition to some of the others. But yeah, this self-centered, emotionally manipulative. Sometimes you also notice that they manipulate the men in their lives with their sexuality. Usually they're very pretty and, you know, and in a way, like they take all the credit for your prettiness. You know, like I was made to believe I was ugly because my mom was pretty. Like it's so silly. But you know, there's a lot of comparison also with like within siblings. If you have a sister, sometimes that also happens, or sister or brother. And yeah, she has to be first. And that comes from a sense of insecurity about herself. And often this results in a lack of empathy or emotional support for the child. So then you have this invisible child that doesn't get seen and doesn't get acknowledged and is always kind of in secret competition with their mother. Then you have the detached mother. So now we're kind of going a little more towards the benevolent side of things. But I mean, this can be not so benevolent in many ways as well. So, like emotionally withdrawn or absent. So when the mother's just not there at all, indifferent to the child's needs and emotions, isolates the child. The child feels neglected. And again, she's prioritizing her own needs over the child's. So the child feels abandoned. This can also happen with different mother archetypes or figures in the family system, whether it's aunties or grandmothers or stepmoms and those kinds of things. And sometimes you have the Cinderella syndrome where, certain kids are prioritized over others. So again, not healthy. Then you have the immature mother or the maiden mother, and she has not been initiated into her full mother energy. This is something I'll talk about in a second, but even though she became a mother and had a physical child, she still acts like a child. And so she has tantrums and she needs excessive attention. This often happens when she wasn't properly able to be a child herself. And the responsibilities of motherhood, they go out the window. Maybe she's not cooking. Maybe she doesn't care for you. Maybe she doesn't clean. Maybe she doesn't do these things. Maybe she complains a lot. And this just creates an unstable environment for the child. So then you have this lost child archetype. And then finally, we have the bestie mom, right? Which seems like, oh, she's so benevolent. She's so nice to me. But essentially, she's treating the child like an equal or a friend, which has boundary issues involved with it. Sometimes this mother shares personal details with the child that are not appropriate. Maybe she's talking about her sex life, or maybe she's talking about her relationships, or maybe she's talking about complex things that a child doesn't need to know about yet. Maybe she doesn't actually guide or discipline the child properly. There's leaky boundaries. The kid can do whatever they want. They get spoiled. They go off and be promiscuous or do things, get in trouble. So again, this is another thing because the child gets confused about what it means to be a child, right? So they're just in that mode. So I just want to take a moment. Maybe we can pop it in the chat. Like, which of these mother archetypes have you noticed show up in your life? Just taking a second to read over the slide and just see, like, maybe it's one or two, maybe it's all seven, but yeah, please pop that in the chat and just take a moment to, again, like wrap your inner child up with some love. And what I'll be doing in the course is I've created several quizzes so that you can actually identify which of these archetypes are most relevant for you. And you can also look at how these archetypes have played out in both your romantic relationships as well as your parenting. Okay. Do I win a prize? Oh my, 6 out of 7. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. This is the beautiful thing, though, about this is that when we do this work, it gives us superpowers. And this is why this came, as such a soul calling for me to share this, because it really helped me to just notice my little tendencies and those little patterns and those triggers that just come up. And they come up so subtly sometimes, but they still sabotage us. So we have a lot of hovering mother, chaotic. Yeah, need to go over this again. Yeah, it's all good. I will share the replay. Love for mom. Yeah, the bestie. Yeah, so it's interesting. I also yearn for that. I wish I could tell my mother so much stuff as an adult, right? The bestie mom. So this is more a child mother dynamic, but as an adult, things do change, right? And even if you are still younger than them, which of course in Asian families, like the hierarchy always stands, but there is something that's really interesting when you begin to support them, and you can develop and strengthen those relationships with strong boundaries still. Okay, micromanager. When I entered adolescence, I felt invisible because all her attention was on my younger sister. Yeah. Yeah. So the family system is such a complex system, and I can't go through all of it right now, but there's so much that we can start to excavate in terms of those dynamics. And they are soul level dynamics, they're karmic dynamics. So when we're going through this process, we're realizing like maybe this dynamic also played out in my past life, and maybe it's coming up right now to be healed so that we can liberate the energy. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to keep moving on in the interest of time. So, what's the antidote to all of this? This is the archetype of the loving mother. And, this isn't necessarily the perfect mother because nobody's perfect. But when we start to identify these qualities, especially when we're working with goddesses and these higher level archetypes and installing these energies back into our body system and remothering ourselves, it can be really beautiful to start to love ourselves the way we wanted to. So this loving mother has emotional availability and empathy. She has consistency and stability. She encourages independence, but also while setting healthy boundaries. She's nurturing without being overly involved. She's modeling healthy emotional expression, especially with her beloveds. She just holds this energy of unconditional love and acceptance, and she has this current of supportive encouragement, but with also consistent corrections, because she has that guiding energy that allows you to kind of be a little bit checked sometimes if you have blind spots. And she's in full creation flow. This is the key with the mother energy. She's in her full bloom, and she has the awareness to track the cycles and the sequences. This is something that I learned about in my spirit baby communication training. And, when you're in that awareness of past and future, and you begin to start to see the patterns, which is what we're doing here, that is the mother energy. That is the being in your full consciousness. And then the karmic contracts are fulfilled and integrated. So a lot of the past stuff has already been healed. And then we can actually start to form these new bonds and new relationships that, as we're moving forward, start to nourish us in a really powerful way. I hear somebody who's unmuted. Could you all mute yourselves, please? Thank you. Okay, so why does mother wounding happen in the first place? This is a question that I really couldn't find answers for on the internet, so I kind of just had to come up with my own, because this is also going past just the psychological analysis and more into that archetypal level analysis of what's going on in the larger cycles of moving from paradigm to paradigm. So we have, of course, we're living in a patriarchal world still, but we're moving out of it. And this missing divine feminine consciousness and education is a massive piece to why these mothers have all of these unhealed patterns and behaviors. So what happened was that they missed these rites of passage. And there's these different gates that a woman moves through in her lifetime. There's at least five blood gates, they call them, which are birth, first menses, mother, if you choose to have a child. With that can also come the gates of abortion and miscarriage. And then you have menopause, and then you have death. And so these rites of passage were traditionally honored, and women were given, proper ceremonies around these movements from one aspect to another. That's why you still have the maiden mother or the immature mother. Even though she's become a mother, she still lives in that immature energy. And that's why many of us are being called to do this work. Sakuria's on the call. She's got a whole school called the Red Tent Mystery School that trains people on how to move through these rites of passage, both personally and professionally. And this is what's so powerful. It's like when we start to do this for each other, we tribalize ourselves in this way and return back to the red tent and do this work, this mother wounding starts to dissolve. Because what also happened in those times was that intergenerational gathering happened, right? We weren't just so isolated. There was actually wisdom that was shared between the grandmothers and the children and the mothers and the aunties, and everybody was just there to do divination practices, to get together and bleed on the earth and just share notes about, the herbs that worked and all of those things. And it was a different time, but that's what's happening now in a modern context through these online circles and women's circles and retreats and things like that. So it's a really special thing that we're re-establishing that's so needed right now. There's also this taboo around never criticizing a mother. We have this ideal that, mother is perfect and she's got to do, like we can't say bad things about our mom. She made us. And at the same time, we have these truths of what we live through. So, sometimes we can't talk about it, which creates this thing called disenfranchised grief. And sometimes this grief is around the mother you never had, or a mother dying too soon, or a swap of mothers. Like, let's say you had a mother and then your parents split and your dad remarried, and now your new mom is your mom. And so there's so many different dynamics between this, but the underlying thing is that we weren't ever felt safe to talk about it. And that's why this forum that I'm going to be creating is where we can talk about it. And then my own little analysis is that these crazy mothers are actually witches that didn't know how to activate their wild woman archetype. And if you're on this call, you're probably pretty witchy, but this is the archetype that is the least understood, right? This is actually the luteal phase in our menstrual cycle, where it's a 2-week long phase that we just labeled as PMS, where we're a little crazy. But actually, this is the wild woman energy that comes in before the crone energy. This is the menopausal energy. This is the hot flash energy. This is that energy. And if your mother is going through menopause right now, or if there's these passages that are happening, this will also help. You understanding this archetype within yourself actually has this weird way of healing that for them. It's crazy, but I've been noticing it with my mother right now, even though, again, this is super taboo. No one talks about menopause. But as we're moving through these cycles every month, if you're still bleeding, this is where we can start to presence the fact that we weren't actually crazy. We weren't lunatics, because lunatic just means moon worshiper. We actually were accessing our magic. And so, yeah, that's a big topic. But yes, we'll talk about that a little later. And then we also have this overemphasis on the maiden phase as the most powerful phase instead of the mother in her full bloom. So in society, we're like always trying to stay young and like looking at celebrities and Gwen Stefani, who still looks like she's 30. And nothing wrong with that. We love beauty. Beauty is beauty. But the mother energy really is that ability to do anything, right? Because if you are a mother, you probably know you got to like step out of yourself. You got to be like have all this radar on to be able to track what's going on with your kids and your life and everything. And it's just another level of superpower when you step into that phase energetically. And then there's also this special case of the immigrant mother and the guilt and shame that comes in, because essentially the belief is that I sacrificed everything for you and therefore you owe me your life. Therefore you need to do everything that I tell you to do because I laid it down. And that's not fair, right? Because we're living in a different society than they did. And so that guilt and shaming, like I've seen one of my best friends, she's Korean, and her mother did not accept her as a daughter until she could have a child. And there was so much pressure on it that it caused all these infertility issues. And she had to go to IVF therapy and all that stuff. And the second she just surrendered, the baby came. But this is also what can create that energetic block and these projections on us that we're here to clear on a higher metaphysical level. Let's take a deep breath. Okay. So, what are some of the consequences of not healing this mother wound? I hate to say it, but they are very vast and they are very critical if we don't deal with this. And I'm laughing a little bit because this is something that we have to be very gentle with ourselves as well. Because again, this energy that we're used to is like, you don't do it right, you fail, you die. That's my extreme anyways. But it's really important to notice that, damn, this really can have a true effect on those subtle decisions that we make of whether or not we feel confident enough to show up. Trust me, coming up doing this webinar was a bit of an edge because it's been a couple of years since I've taught a course, but I realized this was a remnant, a residue of the mother wounding that I had, that I was programmed into my brain saying that I wasn't good enough. So it can turn up as unrealized potential, self-sabotage, not living your true purpose, perpetual stuckness, emotional looping, toxic relationships, which means you're missing out on divine union, which is healthy, happy, beautiful, co-creative relationship. Passing on woundings. Oh, could somebody please mute yourself? I can't see the whole list here. Thank you. Um, Passing on woundings to children. This is really key, right? If we don't understand the stuff for ourselves, it's in our subconscious and we're unaware. We're not aware. We can re-traumatize our child and the pattern continues. Then there's energy stagnation. And then with that comes vampiring because we don't know how to source direct from Great Mother. We start to get that energy from other people. And again, we don't know that we're manipulating others. There's also these knee-jerk decisions, and we're constantly like running around managing disasters and putting out fires. Again, not fun. And then at the end of the day, we have a lack of fulfillment, fun, pleasure, healthy bonds. Stephanie, who's on this call, she posted something recently that a woman in her pleasure, a mother in her pleasure is the most important thing. I think there was a study that said something about that, that when you're in your pleasure, that is the best thing you can do for your children. So super important to prioritize those things. And then of course we have these settling for less, right? Like the bar gets lowered. But if you're here, I know that you have the power to raise your standards and really call in that higher level of experience in all of your relationships. So yeah, and then at the end of the day, if you're not aware of this stuff, you're not able to fully tap into your divine magic and powers and your creative gifts. So that's why this is super important to liberate yourself and remother yourself and tie up, like really get those energy loops all fully integrated so that we can move on and start anew. Okay, so I'm going a little bit over time now, but this will all be recorded. So if you do need to hop off, I'll send everything in the follow-up email. But this is super important because this is how we heal it all. This is the framework that came to me through meditation with Kali. And this is Kali's yantra. This is her symbol. So you can just meditate on the yantra for a moment. And this is the framework. And what I've done in my studies and a lot of this stuff is kind of incorporate these different aspects because not one approach really worked for me because I basically have kind of the worst kind of mother hunger. Actually, it's called third degree mother hunger when the source of your love and bonding is also the source of your fear. When you have that terrifying mother, which is essentially Kali in her wrathful stage. So the four pillars are energetics, which works on the soul level. Then you have psychology, which works on the mind level. Then you have somatics, which works on the body level, and story, which works on the emotional level. And these four pillars have really served me well in understanding healing as a full spectrum experience. And I find the psychology to be very important, but if we're not looking at the energetics and the way the energy is flowing and how each of these woundings actually relates to how our energy sometimes checks out, sometimes it grounds in, sometimes it braces, sometimes it goes in, then we're not aware of these little tendencies. And these are things that like I noticed when I was writing my book. Whenever I came across a difficult passage to write, I had to get up immediately and start snacking because my energy checked out. It had a dissociative flow to it. So these kinds of things are important to know so that when you notice that happening, you go, oh, okay, now I can soothe with a somatic practice, or I can start journaling and writing the story out and figuring out what's going on. So in the course, we're going to be using this framework for every single module, and it's going to be a really beautiful way to start to build a really comprehensive toolkit around this mother healing journey for you. Okay, so this piece, I might not have too much time to go over the whole thing because this is actually what we're going to be deep diving into in the course. But this is the attachment energy archetype matrix. And it is how we look at different attachment styles. So the background to attachment styles is it has to do with when we were children, how our mothers soothed us, and fathers too, and whether or not we were able to go to a regulated state after they soothed us, or if we stayed in an unregulated state. And there's a lot of stuff on the internet about attachment styles, so you can always look up on that. But they did these studies with a child and a researcher and a mother, and they noticed that for certain children, the kids, they would cry when the mother leaves, and then when the mother comes back, they would still be crying. That's the anxious, or they've already learned that the mother's going to abandon them anyway, so they're going to be a little bit walled off. And so when the mother leaves and then the mother comes back, they're just like they don't really react. That's avoidant. And then there's the disorganized, which is what I have, which is when you have such a volatile mother that you can't predict anything. And it creates all this interference in your mind and you're just kind of frazzled. So this whole matrix is looking at the different archetypes and the different attachments, and then the type of child that that also relates to as it relates to the nervous system state. So I'm going to be talking about polyvagal theory a bit, of course. And please mute yourselves. Thank you. And so I won't go through all of this here, but essentially there's that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and a few other responses that we do in order to handle the energy current that's happening in our body. And this is all related to those wounding patterns. So from there, we're going to work with Kalima's energy to neutralize it. Oh.
Burn away.
Burn it all away. Okay, please mute yourselves. Sorry, I don't have my full list here.
Burn away, you bitches that treat me shitty. Go ahead. I won't cry about it.
Okay, I'm not sure who's talking. There we go. Found it. Okay, so yes, we do need to burn it away, and we need to do it in a safe space. And that's why Kali's energy has come in to do this work. And so the somatic pieces that we're going to be working through are going to be very powerful. We're going to do a lot of work to just clear the rage, clear the shame, clear the fears. All that's going to happen. And I'm really excited. So any questions on this to begin before we move on? Because I think right after this, yeah, we're going to do an embodiment practice to shake it out. So perfect timing. I'm going to stop the share here. How did that feel? Let's take a breath together. And I'm going to go through the chat in a second. Maybe presence our flame again. Like, let's burn that all away. We did okay for time. All right, so let me just read back through this chat to see if there's anything there. And we're going to get up and we're actually going to do a somatic practice next. So make sure you have some space. Maybe grab some tea, nourish yourself. Okay. Okay. Loss of village support from mother is the #1 reason for mothers in survival mode, is my opinion as a single mom of 2. Yeah. Yeah. We are re-villaging together. This is a powerful community we're creating right now. So Stephanie also says, my opinion of causes for mothers not being able to show up the way they want to today. Loss of village support from mother is the #1 reason for mothers in survival mode. The rejection of our own inner femininity and the slavery system inflation that forces women to be making money in order to meet the basic needs of the child, food, home, safety, diverting her from her ability to actually show up as the mother they yearn for or create income from her divine feminine inspiration versus survival. Do you want to hop on and talk about that for a second, Stephanie? I feel like you have such a strong voice.
Oh my God. You did so amazing. I honestly have done so much father wound healing because it was just so obvious. And it was less obvious for me within the mother wound healing. So I just want to congratulate you for this. It's really, really excellent. And I actually lead a mother's movement, which is really all about restoring the matriarchy. But first, we have to ground mom's nervous systems into the rest digest when we're in this overstimulated world. And we, in this current society, we like my grandmother had 14 maids. And she had a whole village. My other grandmother had an actual village to help her raise her kids. You know, everybody's making rotis on the street and helping with making the food and with the kids. And we are so isolated more than ever. We were never meant to live without the village. And so I actually had 2 women live with me that were aunties. They didn't have kids. They lived with me over the summer, and it was the most grounding experience ever because I'm doing the job of a 7-person village all by myself. Plus you put on, you know, not having a masculine provider in the picture, then you're also making the money and being the mother at the same time. It's like an impossible task. But this is like the pressure cooker of where we want to be the ones to break the cycles, and it's painful for me and I might get emotional because I'm so consciously aware of the impact of when I'm in survival mode on my kids because I've done so much work. Yet it feels almost like so hard to get out of that. So I'm grounding myself so that I can be present, yet I'm still holding the space of like seven. I could literally have a cook, a cleaner, a driver, a personal assistant, like maybe two more people. I could have like seven people just to have a balanced life. I'm in Mexico for 1 week to create my course for moms, and I this is my first time in 8 years that I have a whole week to myself just to work, so that I can get ahead, so that I can support my kids. So it's wild. It's
Wow.
wild. So it's a call out to the aunties that don't have kids that want to experience like be an auntie to a mom, and that will probably be so soothing for her to be reparented and feel supported. And then for women with no kids to experience the world of the modern day mother, which is in complete breakdown. So it's not to leave us in destitute, but it's a opportunity for a huge breakthrough in how we all want the village, and it's like even more we are the epicenter of all of life here. So it's a huge opportunity for the rest of humanity to grow up in that safety and nurturing. So thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very powerful when we re-village ourselves in this way and realize this is how it always was. And it does take a village to raise a child. And I'm an auntie and just and these kids are star babies. Like they're so intelligent. Like they're next gen, they have like superpowers built in. And it's incredible to see, how we can start to bring this ancient new paradigm back online. So with that, before I share about the course, which I'll mention starts March 13th and it's 6 weeks, I'll send all the info and I'll go over it as well. But essentially, it is a deep dive into all of this stuff, but it's more than just an informational deep dive. It will be a transmutational, metaphysical, alchemical container working with Kali's energy. And she is fierce and swift and knows how to just cut it all out, and you will not be the same on the other side. Trust me. And there also are some beautiful bonuses that I'll share in a minute, but I want to get us moving because this is the power of our bodies and the somatic piece. So I'm going to share one track, and the intention is really just to move whatever needs to be moved, whatever might have come up during this call. You have the power to transmute it with your own body, with your dance, with your shaking, with your fierce Kali tongue. I've got all my weapons here that I'm going to be dancing with. Thank goodness I spent all this time making this Halloween costume that I got canceled for, but that's a whole other story. But sometimes Kali, she puts us in these situations where we have to brave the fires and ego death has to happen, and this happens. So let's go into the song, gathering all that energy back into yourself and giving your inner child another hug, squeeze. You can say to your inner child, I love you so much. You are so worthy of love. You deserve all the love in the world. Okay, so we can come back to the screen. How did that feel? I love a good dance. I live to dance. So there's going to be some other incredible somatic practices I'm going to be sharing with you in the portal and in every session that we do together. So I'm going to quickly jump over into the course page so that you can have a sense of what is in store if you want to go deeper. But if you do need to hop off, thank you so much for coming. And the replay will be sent out. And yeah, this is just going to be such a fun and deep dive into the aspect of the mother and all faces of the mother and the full spectrum with Kali's guidance. So I'm going to now just share site. So if you want to have a look, by the way, I'm pricing this super low. 222 is the price. and you get a ton of bonuses. And I'm also going to do a masterclass on mastering chronomancy, advanced chronomancy with Kali. So like how to bend time literally by doing journaling and memoir writing. So yes. Yes, maybe you and your own mother can do the course together. Oh my gosh, that would be incredible. Wow, that would be a little like edgy for me. But yeah, it's one of those things that you never know. It could be a thing. I've definitely been in some like medicine spaces with mothers and daughters with a little bit of envy, and I realize, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen one more time just to give you to show you what's going on with the course and the all the details. So here we go. Okay, can you guys see the screen? Okay, healing the mother wound with Kali Ma, 6-week journey. So we're gonna go into these 4 pillars, like I mentioned before. And so each module is gonna have these pillars incorporated into them. We're gonna start with understanding Kali Ma as an alchemical healer. Then we're gonna go into week 2 is healing the inner child. Week 3 is the power of sacred rage. Week 4 is restoring personal sovereignty, super important. Week 5 is the art of remothering yourself. And week 6 is co-creative communion with the divine. And this piece has been my intense focus over the last 5 years, is how to really bring in that deep connection with these divine forces. As some of you guys know, I'm super into Egypt stuff, and my primary connection is actually with Isis and Hathor, but Kali was the first one to come into my life, and she's my OG goddess queen. But when we actually really start to move in these ways, they guide us in ways that no one else can. And for me, it's a very somatic process. And so my hope for you is that through these practices that we do, we start to unlock those abilities to communicate with ourselves and our guides through our bodies. And that somatic intuition starts to turn on. And it is fail proof. Like, you notice when your head is nodding that way, or there's different techniques that we will go over, but it is a thing. and it sometimes surprises you how they guide you, because they can see the bigger picture. And especially with Kali, she works across time and space, and she pedals the wheels of time, so she has this greater vantage point and perspective that she can really inform you with. And then we have our chronomancy course, which is going to be about quantum soul retrieval, crafting a story-worthy life through pattern tracking and sacred sequencing, future timeline compression, which is a cool thing, because like when you excavate the past and you start to do it over, there's a siren going on in the background. When you start to go through that excavation, like I noticed this when I was writing, I literally compressed time by compressing an interval of my life through the writing journey. And then I can see how that's actually changing my future timeline and calling in certain realities faster, which is super cool. Okay, so it's going to be held live on Thursdays from 4 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, starting March 13th. It's 6 modules, but we're actually going to do 7 weeks, because that last weekend I like to do everything live. So we're going to do that last class live as well. You get all of these amazing things, a bunch of quizzes, workbook, private community, somatic exercises and rituals, and playlists. And then we also have a Lakshmi Wealth Consciousness Masterclass as a bonus, and some discounts on one-on-one sessions and upcoming retreats. And the investment starts at 222, and it's a sliding scale from 222 to 444. And I really wanted to make this super affordable for you, because this is so important. And it's one of those things that, I don't want price or finances to be a barrier. And we also have a fast acting bonus, which is if you register within the next 48 hours, you get my entire Embodied Creativity Summit bundle. So I did 2 summits, one that was priestess focused and the other that was divine union focused. And it was 46 interviews and activations with some of the world's most prolific conscious creators. And so you get that whole vault for free if you sign up within the next 2 days. And there's also a money back guarantee. So if this doesn't work for you, if you try the first week and you're like, this is crap, I will gladly give you your money back. But I hope you got a lot out of this session already. And yeah, we have that Facebook community that we're going to be able to just tune into each other and share the true stuff that's so hard to presence unless you have a therapist. And this is like the price of one therapy session, essentially. So, take advantage of the community and really let yourself be seen and heard because this is Kali's energy. And yeah, and so I think that's pretty much it. So and there's some Q&As at the end if you want to read through those. I'll open it up for any questions now if anybody has anything on their heart that they are unsure of. And yeah, we're starting in a couple weeks. So you have some time to prepare. And yeah, thank you again for being here and for really bringing your whole self. And maybe if you feel if you feel something different, please also share that. Elizabeth asks, do you also do father wound work? So the short answer is no. I mean, I do all sorts of different kinds of like soul retrieval work and relational work, but my father wound isn't the same as the typical father wound because my father was actually the mother figure in my life. And most father wounding comes around neglect, the overworking father, the father who's never there, or the rageful father. But my dad's like a tarot reading troubadour that writes a song every day. So my wounding around my father is a little different than the average. So I like to teach from what I know, and I like to teach from experience. But I'm sure there's some other people who are really good at addressing that, and there's probably tons of resources as well. Is it USA? It is USD because that's the more like most of my people in the States, even though I'm Canadian. But just to keep it, yeah, even, we're just going to do USD. Yeah, lots learned. Thank you, Ashley. Any other questions? Anyone want to come off mute and share how you're feeling right now? We have a couple minutes.
I just want to share, Leah, how amazing that was. I think I was so impressed with like your archetypes, and I think it's so valuable how you've taken your experience. And this literally is like such important work because we can actually transform the whole next generation of humanity, starting with us by reparenting ourselves. So I just want to like really, I'm loving it. It was amazing, just amazing. And I just love how you have this really great structure, but then you pull in like the heavenly realms, like of course, there we go.
Thanks so much, Steph. Appreciate it, sister. Yeah, and this is like a gathering of priestesses. Like I can tell you guys you gals are all so powerful. I think there might be some guys here. I'm not sure. But yeah, anyone else want to share? Nisha?
Hi, just wanted to say thank you for today. It's been amazing. Um, so this is all Zoom based. Do you do like because I'm in Vancouver, do you do something that, we can meet as well?
Good question. I might do something in person if there's enough people here. Yeah, I do one-on-one work and energy healing in person. But yeah, and if anybody needs additional support, I am open for sessions too. I can do a lot of quantum soul retrieval type stuff and deeper clearing because I work with the Neteru, which are the Egyptian forces of creation. But yeah, let me think about it. If there's a Vancouver crew and we want to get together, because this is also forming community, I would love to have a session. And if you got kids, like this is again, we're revillaging. Maybe we just have like a play date and embody our inner children with our kids and do some ritual. I'd be down.
I wanted to shout out Joanne. Joanne got me in touch with you because I was at a spiritual development circle with her and she saw your Insta stories. So
Wonderful. Yeah, I love Joanne. She's been to a couple of my retreats. Incredible. Yay. Thank you, Nisha. My mom is just standing outside right now. It's so interesting. She's there. She's gardening. Anyone else?
Thank you, Leah. It was so beautiful. My sister joined the call. She's younger on her journey, and this like beautiful way to like depersonalize, realize like, oh, like this is a whole movement. It feels so strong to be with all the people here and your stories of like overcoming and strength and and balance. So it's really truly spectacular, like, um, order and meaning and patterns in a space where there can be so much emotional experience.
Mm, thank you so much, Angela. It's a powerful experience to also look at the real-time effect of all of this healing and all of the weaving. Like there's no mistakes that my mom is just literally standing outside, like she's right there. Her energy is like called into this sphere. And yeah, it's just it's such a cool thing that we get to track and monitor and also like make stories out of.
Blessed work.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, definitely take care of yourselves today. Grab some water, nourish yourself, do something playful and creative, and maybe like pull up a coloring book. And because this is all like coming back to inner child healing. So, what does your inner child want to do? You can always ask yourself. And then you can also ask yourself, like, what would a healed mother do in response? And yeah, we're doing it all together, and Kali Ma's on our side. So we're gonna close out the space. I'm gonna have Kali come up here on the screen one last time and say goodbye. And yeah, let's just take a moment to feel into our hearts again and all that has been cultivated, sending love to ourselves and to our mothers and to our mother figures and to our family and sisters and brothers, our fathers, great Mother Earth that holds and nourishes us as well. May all that we have cultivated and received here ripple out into the collective field to support all those who are on their own healing journeys. May we all return back to our sacred innocence and restore ourselves back to the truth of who we are. Namaste. You can blow out your candle if you like. And with that, and so it is, and so it is, and so it is. And I hope to see you in the course starting very soon. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and we'll send out this replay. And much love to you all. Have a wonderful day, everybody.